So just a couple of quick statistics, because I'm a statistics girl. As of 2020, cyber incidents are now ranked as the #1 risk to businesses. So, and that's coming from all different disaster areas, whether we're talking about fires or floods or, anything of that nature. Cyber incidents are now #1. And along with that, the average company or organization, it takes over 197 days for you to detect a breach within your system. So that's over 6 months it takes for your business to realize that you were breached in one way or another. Unless, of course, it's from a ransomware attack, which we'll talk about that a little bit more. Those are pretty much instant. But anything else, whether it's malware being downloaded onto your system or something sitting in the background collecting data and collecting information, it takes upwards on average 197 days that is sitting there just collecting data, collecting information about your company and doing whatever it is that hacker chooses to do with it. In a lot of instances, they're selling it. When we're talking about ransomware, they're going to hit you and want a fee that they want you to pay right away. But these other systems, they're just going to sell that data and they're going to stay on there and collect as much information about you, your company, your clients, your customers, everything they can so that they can sell it to the highest bidder at a later date. And until you realize that it's there, which is very hard to detect based upon what different parameters you have on your systems, it will sit there. In much cases, for a lot longer than 6 months, it's going to sit there. So just to talk about a few ways that your business can protect yourself from different cyber incidents. First and foremost, make sure that you have the right technological protections in place, whether it's having antivirus on your systems, having a firewall, making sure that your business is using content filtering. Those are a lot of ways that you can protect attacks from happening. So we'll talk a little bit about antivirus first. Antivirus is important and everybody uses different things. There's McAfee, there's Avast, there's, oh my goodness, just so many different versions of antivirus. We are partial to Avast. We found it's a great system, works very well. One thing I do want to point out about antiviruses is be cautious of what you're using. A lot of businesses home computers, you find a free antivirus now and then that you're using. Keep in mind, nothing is ever free. You are paying that company one way or another. You are paying them with your data, your information that they're selling to third parties so that they can, solicit you for different things in the future. The other problem with free antiviruses is they're not typically business regulated. So meaning that you legally as a business cannot use a free antivirus product to protect your computer software, or protect your technology. Kind of goes along with other regulations, other things that you use. We talked about it earlier, Microsoft Office suites. I've walked into businesses that have the same Microsoft Office programs on their computers as I have on my home computer. Regulatory wise, you cannot do that. You have to have a business grade Microsoft, platform in order for that to be a legal item for you to use for your business. So understand that. And when we're talking from an insurance perspective, you want to be cautious of things like that as well, because look at it this way. If you're a business and your Keurig machine catches on fire and all of a sudden your break room burns down. If your Keurig machine is not a business grade Keurig machine, that could cause you to have your insurance denied for covering that incident. So it's kind of the same thing. If you're bound by certain regulatory measures, or if your cyber insurance calls for certain things and you don't have those measures in place, like you're not using that business grade antivirus, you're not using that business grade Microsoft program. If something were to attack that and you get breached because of it, your insurance could be denied because of that. So always make sure you're using business grade products. Do you want to talk a little bit more about antivirus and what it does to protect and can't do?
So most of the time, modern antiviruses basically have a large database of malware, viruses, Trojan horses, lots of things that they know exist and know have compromised other businesses. So they have this database, but there are still things called zero-day attacks, which is where it's kind of unknown and it's like the first instance that you've seen it. So those are kind of the things that antivirus is susceptible to. But again, once it's realized, it's going to be added to the database, and it should be able to block that. It should be able to protect you. Depending on the antivirus, obviously they have different databases. As Christina said, we like Avast. We have the paid Avast version. The free version is just not going to be quite what you need for a business. Like she said, if you get something for free, it's because you're the product. So That's just something to be wary of. You can trust them because you've used them in the past, but at the same time, they don't necessarily owe you anything, right? They're a business themselves. So just be wary of things like that. And then
Well, another thing that you want to be mindful of with free software as well is it doesn't get the regular updates that paid software does. And like Micah was talking about, when it comes to those different attack vectors and known viruses and known Trojan horses and things, they're all sitting there. And so with paid versions, every day they're being updated. So every day they're being updated with every single new virus that's coming out. And trust me, they're coming out every single day. Hackers are coming up with new things based on new vulnerabilities that they're finding in systems. So paid versions of antivirus are going to update with those on a regular basis, so your company's going to be protected.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things are moving towards subscription-based rather than buying it outright. One of the biggest things we've seen is Office, the Office suite. It's Office 365. It does offer some, good things as opposed to buying it outright. When you bought it outright, maybe it was good for 5-6 years. Then the next thing you know, you're a couple versions behind. So there are different aspects to these suites. Like you have Outlook. The newest Outlook, the latest and greatest Outlook is going to come with the best security features. You can disable forwarding. There's a lot of things you can do where, in case someone's account is compromised, you can set up parameters that would maybe notify you that someone is changing these rules. If it's not you or your IT administrator, you know that something's wrong. You've been compromised, right? So, and then there's a lot. There's a multi-factor authentication, which is kind of like a secondary sign-in almost. So you sign in once, and then you approve the sign-in on a different device. So that way, this is like if somebody's signing into your email, and you get this notification, well, it wasn't me signing in, so it must be someone else, right? So, there's a lot that goes on, but back to the subscription thing, you get the latest and greatest, but most things are going that way. Antivirus, you don't just buy antivirus outright anymore. It's a monthly fee, same with Office. So a lot of these things are moving to that model to keep you on the latest and greatest because every day people are trying to find vulnerabilities, and they will find vulnerabilities, just the nature of the beast, I guess. So you just have to stay on top of things, stay updated, get the latest and greatest as best as you can. I mean, things aren't just going to be obsolete, because there's a newer version, but it's something to think about. It's something to have, in mind. Don't let your things expire. Don't let subscriptions expire. It leaves you open to attacks.
And so really when it comes to protecting your business, you want to have those different technological things in place, whether it's antivirus, a firewall that's protecting you from what's trying to come into your network and into your system. Excuse me. And just making sure that you're using things like content filtering. Is anybody here familiar with content filtering? One person, okay. So basically what content filtering is when it relates to a business is it's a manner in which you can go and block different domains, different websites from being accessed or coming through your business. So if for example, if you want to keep your employees from getting on Facebook while they're at work or keep them from shopping while they're on the clock, you can use content filtering to do that, which in some instances is a great idea because it does protect. A lot of the ways that companies or hackers get into your company is through malicious links that can come through Facebook. So if your employees are on your company network, accessing Facebook, clicking on, taking all these silly little quizzes and stuff, that's how they're not only giving away potential information, but they're also opening a doorway for these hackers to get into your systems, to download malware, things of that nature. So companies and businesses use content filtering. A lot of schools use content filtering to keep their students from visiting sites they don't want them visiting while they're at school. So it's a great thing. Typically fairly inexpensive for companies to use, very easy to use as well. And you can really make it as intricate or as simple as you want. It's just based on what you want to do to protect your company. So another technological thing that we kind of recommend that companies do use. So we've hit antivirus, we talked about content filtering, a little bit about firewalls. Anything else from a technological standpoint?
Usually when you get a firewall, it's the gateway between your network and the internet. So that's usually where attacks come from. They attack the firewall to try to get into your network. So you want to have like a hardware and a software piece to it. It's just layering your security, basically. So, the more layers you have, the harder it should be to breach, in theory. Obviously, I mean, if somebody really, 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 really wants to get into something, they probably will if they're that determined. But it's usually like with a hacker or someone trying to compromise your network, your email. It's going to be, how long is this going to take me? Should I move on to the next fish, I guess, So it's like locks. If somebody wants to get in your house, unfortunately, they probably can. But if you lock all the doors, they're going to say, let's go to the house that's unlocked. Let's go try to find a door that's unlocked, right? So in that same vein, you want to do everything you can to protect yourself, to deter them. It's really a deterrent. Just make them find an easier target. Unfortunately, that's just how it goes.
Yeah, and when it comes to businesses, nothing is ever going to protect you 100% from being breached. If somebody wants in bad enough, like Mike said, it's going to happen. But it's important to layer these different, vectors to make sure that you're offering yourself the best chance of not being breached. We deal with a lot of different companies, whether they're the little mom and pop breakfast place, all the way up to banks, schools, hospitals. So we've seen everything and anything. I've walked into offices before and seen the company's credit card machine where they run their customers' credit cards hooked up to a router they bought from Walmart that was still using the default admin password and login information. So that's, I am not a technical person, but I could figure out how to hack that. So, and then there goes all that company's customers' credit card information. We've walked into different businesses that don't have a firewall up protecting their credit card information that they're running, different restaurants and things. So it's really scary to think what's out there. But you can do simple things to protect yourself. And in most cases, these things are free or very low cost. Something as simple as locking up a file cabinet that contains social security numbers is important. We'll talk about passwords, making sure that the passwords that you use in your office are complex, that you change them regularly. And by regularly, we recommend typically every 90 days. But that they're a combination of symbols and numbers and lowercase and capital letters that, please don't use your birthday or, your kids' names. Or can anybody tell me what the number one used password is? Password. That's one of them. Yep. That's a good one. What else? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. QWERTY. Those simple things that anybody knows. So if you're using those, so are about 500 million other people. So you want to come up with something unique. When it comes to passwords, you want to make sure you're not using the same passwords for your business email and your business applications that you use for Facebook. Look at how many people get hacked on Facebook constantly. I don't know about you, but I have Facebook and I'm always getting those messenger things where, open this video or, the odd messages from somebody pretending to be one of my friends or this or that. Happens all the time because people's passwords are too easy to crack. So don't ever use the same passwords for, your work applications, your banking applications, credit cards, Facebook, Instagram, any of that stuff. Change things up and keep them complex. And by complex, I don't mean you have to have just some random gambit of numbers and letters, but make it a little bit more challenging. Like we were talking about, use a phrase or something of that nature, a song lyric, something that may mean something to you that's not going to be the easiest thing to crack, and the longer the better. The whole way hackers tend to compromise passwords is through databases or just going through and working them through systems until they start getting those numbers in line and finding something that works. And the longer your password is, the easier or the harder it's going to be to crack.
Right. Yeah. So there's a couple different ways people can try to access passwords. There's actually, similar to the virus database that Antivirus uses, there's databases that contain the most common passwords. And so you can set up a machine, AI, to run through this list, right? So you can do things like set login amount, like how many times you can log in with the wrong or try to log in with the wrong password before that account's locked. Okay, so that would freeze somebody out. But they're going to run through this list of commonly used passwords. They can also do a thing called brute forcing, which is where it just tries random things. So it's a machine. That's where the longer password will come in. It's as you add characters, it just makes that many more possibilities that your password could be, right? So a longer password is almost better than a more complex password in terms of throwing symbols, numbers, upper and lower case in there. So longer passwords are kind of the standard at this point, just because brute force is probably the most common way to do it. But as far as compromising goes, it really comes down to like social engineering, getting phished, like people just basically giving out their information because they're unaware of what they're doing. Not necessarily someone actually hacking, right? So they spoof your boss's email and ask you for something important and you send it over to them. One, they know that's a working email that somebody's watching, that somebody is on the other end of, so that's good. That's kind of one of their check boxes. They don't want to send emails to defunct mailboxes that nobody's looking at, right? They want to get feedback. So they do that. So now they know you've got a good mailbox. And they're going to keep spoofing you. Maybe you send them something important, and it can cause a lot of havoc if they request a money transfer. Well, one of the best things to do if you get an odd email like that, like why would my boss ask me this, right? Call them up. Send them a message. Maybe not email them because maybe their mailbox is compromised, right? So there's just kind of things you can go through. There's some training you can take to recognize phishing emails when someone spoofs, because sometimes it's hard. Sometimes they have spot on, like copied the signature, the font, even kind of how maybe someone speaks, right? Or writes to you. So you just have to be wary that it seems like impossible, some of the stuff that people pull off, but in the back of your mind, you gotta remember, like, they're trying to make a living doing this, right? So they're gonna do whatever they can. Not to be too scary, I know there's a lot that can happen, and it's kind of a mystery for most of it, but you just have to try to check these boxes, like don't respond to emails that are fishy. I know it's what they are, but so, call somebody up. Hey, did you send me this email? No. All right, well, we need to get a hold of our IT guy or our IT people, whatever. We need to figure out what's going on. Was somebody compromised? Or was somebody's email just spoofed? Because that doesn't necessarily mean that they're compromised, right? They can just say, well, I'm going to use Christina McCracken's email. I'm going to make my email look like hers, like it comes from the same domain. But you can do certain things, get information, and see where the actual original sender originated. So, but like that's what I'm saying. They don't necessarily have to compromise. They can just spoof. So it's another thing to be wary of.
And so basically what he's talking about spoofing is something as simple as my personal email address. Instead of what it is, I'm going to change one little letter. That wouldn't be obvious to somebody that sees that email address all the time. But when you actually look at it and see, oh shoot, they put a Z in instead of an S for that. But when you get emails from that person all the time, like your CEO or your HR manager or finance manager or whatever the case may be, you aren't going to look as closely at that email address 9 times out of 10. You're going to look at the body of that email. And so that's how easy these hackers can gain access. How many of you have ever gotten a phishing email? Okay. So probably one of the biggest ones we see regularly is Netflix or Amazon or UPS. We tried to deliver your package. You weren't home. And here's the tracking number. And most people, especially around Christmas, I know I'm terrible. I order online all the time. So I'm getting emails constantly. Oh, this was delivered and that was delivered. And so you really have to think and pay attention. Did I order something? Should it have been delivered today? Is this an accurate tracking number? I mean, I'm a big one. I order a lot of stuff from Amazon. So I get those emails that say, here's your tracking number when it was shipped. Before I click on anything in that UPS link, the first thing I do is pull up Amazon's website, go right to my account, and make sure those tracking numbers match. Or look at it from the actual, just go look at the tracking number on Amazon versus opening it up in the email. Netflix is a big one. Oh, your account's been locked out. You need to, put in your credentials. Click this link. Okay, so you put in your password and your login name, and then they're asking for your bank account. You need to verify your debit card before we'll unlock your account. Okay, well, you just handed your debit card off to a hacker is what you just did. So if you ever get emails like that have a sense of urgency to them, are requesting information you normally wouldn't give out via email, anything of that nature, it's always best to just go directly to that business's website, whether it's your bank, Netflix. If you're getting an email from your bank, call them up. Anymore, if you're getting a text message or something from your bank claiming that there's a concern that your card's been stolen or whatever the case may be, don't answer that text message. Don't respond to that person that called you necessarily. Hang up the phone and call your bank directly via the number on the back of your card. That's the best thing you can do. And these are all ways to protect your business too. How many of you have a written security policy for your business? Okay, 2 of you. All right, big recommendation. And it's something as simple as an expectation for your employees. Whether you're a small business with 5 people or a corporation with 500, having that document with a written set of guidelines that you expect your employees to follow is very important, because it lays out the rules and also lets them know what can happen if they don't follow those guidelines. We deal with a lot of companies, we write those policies. And even for our company, we have everything listed from what the expectation is for your passwords down to how often we back up our data and information, how we dispose of data and old equipment once it's reached end of life. Everything and anything you can think of related to the privacy of your data should be included in that policy. And ours is 27 pages long. But it's a lot of important information, and it really sets the guidelines so your employees understand what they can and cannot do. Something as simple as, like I said, perusing Facebook on your lunch hour on your work computer can leave your business vulnerable. So they need to understand what your expectation is to protect from that. Mike talked about training. We offer a great training platform for employees, and it has a lot of different things. And so this is something that I love to push upon people, because any training is good training. Knowledge is great. But in the event that you don't want to take this route, I do suggest you do get online. There are a lot of offers for free cybersecurity training, just little snippets of videos that you can watch to give your employees a sense of this is what we need to be looking out for. With the training that we use in particular, it's great because not only do they offer annual training videos, they also offer simulated phishing attacks. And what I mean by that is, on a frequency of, whatever you want to do, whether it's weekly, monthly, quarterly, you send each one of your employees a simulated phishing email. And you can make it as simple or as challenging as you want to. You can tailor it to your business. I can make it look like it came from the CEO. What do you want? Whatever you want done with it can be done. And see if they click on it. See if they click on that link. And when they do, they're alerted, hey, this was a simulated phishing attempt. We need you to go through some additional training. This platform offers additional training, just as a reminder. You never want to make your employees feel like they've done something horrible. It's all about educating. And anymore, there's so many different ways that your business can be attacked, that educating your employees is really going to help keep that from happening. So I do recommend highly that you do incorporate some sort of cybersecurity training within your platform of protection. It's only going to help, and you're going to keep your employees on their toes. It changes every day. Like I said, there's new ways hackers are attacking. We talked a little bit about ransomware. Everybody familiar with ransomware? For the most part, okay, somebody clicks on a phishing email. And by the way, 91% of breaches are the result of somebody clicking on a phishing email. And so somebody clicks on that phishing email, and all of a sudden up pops on their screen this box that says, we are now encrypting your data, and you need to pay us, 150 Bitcoin, which 150 Bitcoin could be the equivalent of $300,000. Just depends what Bitcoin's going for that day. So now you're stuck. And as it goes and goes and stays on your system, it's encrypting more and more of your data. So you have 2 options. Either you pay the $300,000 to these hackers, and you hope you get your data back. And by that, what I mean is hackers do want to give you your data back. If you're going to pay them, they're going to give you that key to unlock your data. Because if they didn't, it wouldn't do them any good. If people are going to stop paying if they're not actually going to give you your data back. So, but the problem with that is a lot of times those keys can be faulty. There can be mistakes. There could be something else going on within your system. So even though you pay that $300,000, you still may not get your data back. And now you're out all of your business data as well as your money. So there's a problem. But the other issue that we're facing now is, in the past, some businesses had great backups, which is something else we'll talk about too. So if you're backing up your data the way you should be, then okay, maybe we don't pay the ransom. And we'll just revert back to our latest backup. We can restore our systems, get the ransomware off of our equipment, won't have to worry about it. The problem that's arising now is hackers are figuring out that we're doing this. And so now they're threatening you with, okay, either you pay us and we'll give you your data back, if you choose not to pay us, we're going to release your data to the world, sell it to the highest bidder, whatever the case may be. So either way, you don't have a choice. Either your data is going to be leaked, all your clients, customers, everybody's information is out there, and they're also going to, know that you were breached, which gives your brand a bad reputation. Or, what are you going to do? You're just between a rock and a hard place. So either way, you're out data or you're out money. So I'll let Mike talk a little bit about backups.
So there's a lot of ways to go about backups. The way that we like to do it with our clients is have a local backup, which is just storage, just memory, server with memory. And what it'll do is it replicates servers. Like I said, there's a lot of ways to do it. So you can do just your users, like their computers, or you can do the servers that maybe they remote into, or wherever the data would be stored. So you can you can back that up. And we like to do it pretty often because, in the case that you need to restore from a backup, you want it to be pretty current, right? So we have, typically with clients, we have a nightly backup that does like the whole system. And then throughout the day, it does incremental backups. So they're smaller, the data transfer isn't quite as big. We have run into some problems where maybe the internet wasn't the greatest. So backups can take longer depending on the internet connection too. But having that backup, if it's on the same network as something that gets compromised, they can probably get to it. So they could also encrypt that. So then what we also recommend is maybe having a cloud backup. So that's stored somewhere far and away, totally different network. They would have to breach them. So you're safe. So what you would do in that case, maybe, assuming they're not threatening to just sell your data, you could wipe those systems and restore them from that cloud backup. So it would be a lot less downtime than worrying about whether or not they encrypted your servers with the backups on them, or the downtime just from not having your people be able to work, right? So there's a lot that goes into preventing that by having these backups. You can just pull basically everything in from the latest one, assuming you do it daily, and kind of move on. You can wipe it. If you format all the hard drives and just rebuild them, the ransomware should be gone. You'll want to do checks throughout the network to make sure it's not hiding somewhere, but for the most part, that's the best case for you, as long as you have those backups. So they're pretty great. And we've had times where somebody's computer gets, it dies, the hard drive dies. Well, good thing we had this backup. Their work is not lost, right? So it's somewhere else. We can just pull it in. We just whip them up a new computer, pull that data in, and it's pretty seamless. It's really nice. So those are kind of the benefits of having backups. It's peace of mind, and you don't necessarily have to pay hackers, hopefully. So.
The reality is a lot of the ways that you have to go about protecting your business are not free, and a lot of them are not cheap. But in the end, keeping your systems up to date and spending a little bit of money on an IT budget to make sure that you have those different layers are going to protect you. The one thing I hear from businesses all the time, especially smaller businesses, is, well, I don't need to worry about that. I'm this little tiny business. Who's going to want to hack me? Well, who do you deal with? Think about your vendors. Think about the companies that you deal with. We all heard about the Target breach, right? How was Target breached? Target was breached through one of their HVAC vendors that had holes in their system. Somebody breached them and then was able to get into Target's system, where then they obviously had access to a ton of data and information about probably everyone sitting in this room, myself included. So, look at it that way. What businesses do you work with? What clients do you work with? And what could that hacker possibly access from them or get into because you had holes in your systems? How many of you are bound by different federal or governmental regulations or compliance statutes? Probably, yeah. I imagine you are to a certain extent. Okay, yeah. So the townships, and a lot of you aren't, but whether it's a law firm, a financial advisor, you're all expected to comply with certain regulations that require you to have things like cybersecurity policies, that require that you encrypt data. So those are all different layers of protection. Even for those people that are not required to have that, it's important that you do. A lot of businesses well, I won't say a lot of businesses. Some businesses still house customer credit card information, social security numbers, dates of birth, addresses, all sorts of personally identifiable information, or PII, within their business, whether it's in that filing cabinet or it's stored on an Excel file within a computer. Think about the different things that you have sitting on your laptop, on your hard drive, within the filing cabinet sitting next to you, and what are you currently doing to protect that information from being stolen? And if you have antivirus on your computer, great, that's one protection. But that doesn't mean that somebody can't still come in and access that computer. I can't tell you how many times I walk into businesses for meetings and there's nobody sitting at the reception desk because she went to go use the restroom or whatever the case may be. And I walk around the front and right there's her wide open computer for me to get into whatever I want, because she didn't take a second to hit 2 buttons and lock that computer when she walked away. Something happens all the time. I'm sure everyone's probably seen the different TV exposés they've done where, somebody's walked into a bank and just walked into the back room and sat down at a computer and started doing stuff, and everybody's looking at them saying, well, who's this person? What are they doing here? Why are they on that computer? But does one person get up and say, hey, can I help you? Nope. And they can pop a USB drive into that computer, take whatever data is available to them. And so once again, a lot of companies use different applications now. So a lot of your PII or potential data that could be exposed is within an application. So not really as much of a risk, but there's a lot that still have those Excel spreadsheets right on their desktops or within file share folders that can be accessed easily from anybody that sits down at your computer. So it's important to make sure you and your employees take simple steps, like simply locking your desktop when you walk away, so that you have to put that password in order to access anything the next time you sit down. Not a big deal, but a lot can happen in 5 minutes. Even in our office alone, we don't have a lot of people coming and going. We're a quiet office, but someone could walk in at any time, and if I'm upstairs by myself and I'm in the restroom, I'm not going to know they're in my office. Now, I don't have a lot of exciting stuff on my computer, but that doesn't mean a good, hacker couldn't get through my computer and get to his or to the boss's or to anything else on our network. So taking that 2 seconds and locking a computer is something that's really important, just to help minimize that risk even more. Yeah, think about applications you've downloaded on your phones, whether it's, the Facebook or Instagram or this or that. And when you get that list of information that says either agree or disagree, and what do we all do? Click agree. I want the Facebook app. Give me the app. I don't care what all the privacy stuff is. Care. When it comes to your business, care. Read that. Yes, it can be a little bit daunting, but you really need to have an understanding of what that company is doing to protect you, protect that data that they're taking from you, whether it's credit card information, client information, customer information. Understand what their measures are for protection. Like I mentioned, we are working a lot with some New York State schools right now trying to go through their new education laws, and they're all cybersecurity related. And one thing that the schools are putting in place is every school has to have a vendor agreement with every application or piece of software that they use. So, for example, right now New York schools are not allowed to use YouTube anymore for anything. Nothing at all, because YouTube refuses to sign an agreement saying what they're doing with any data that they're collecting, basically. Thankfully, we were able to get Google, so they can still use Google programs and software. But that's the important thing, is understand what's in those vendor agreements. If you're not sure, have your lawyer take a look at them, just to make sure that you are still protecting your business. It's just too difficult and challenging, and with all the data breaches, we really want to avoid that in any way that we can, because unfortunately for small businesses, approximately 60% of any small business that has a breach will be out of business within 6 months if they do not have any sort of plans in place to help themselves. So whether that's backup and disaster recovery plans, a cybersecurity insurance policy, you need to have those measures in place. If you don't, you're not coming back from it. The chances are very slim, because you're just going to, end up with having too much downtime. You're not going to have the finances to actually recover from those incidents without having those measures in place. So once again, layer your security measures. Make sure you have a written security policy, a backup and disaster recovery policy, so that you have a plan in place on how you're going to recover if you have a fire, if your power goes out, if a server goes down. There's so many disasters that can range from very minor disruptions to major. I mean, what in the last few years, the flooding that we had in the area, how many businesses did that take out? You know, you have a pipe burst on the second floor and it runs down and hits, you know, right on top of your server room, and you lose all your servers. You know, what's your plan for that? So it's not all just cybersecurity, but have a plan for everything that your business could potentially encounter. Makes life a little bit easier.
A few pieces of cyber insurance and what it covers, how it protects you. But also, you had asked, what can you do, what services are available? I want to touch on that first. Working with an agency like Gannon, we also have our loss control department. And that's the department in charge of making sure that we try and limit your exposures to risk as much as possible. What can we do to transfer your risk somewhere else? And so one of the things you can do when you're looking to mitigate your risk is call in, work with our loss control department, and they'll help you develop policies specific to your business. Well, this is what you should be doing because here are your risks, and here's how we can help prevent it. Because insurance really, for the most part, reacts to something bad that's already happened. So we can help limit that as much as possible. And two other ways, cyber insurance, the first conversation should really start at risk control. How are we going to limit your need for the cyber insurance? You're going to need it no matter what, but how can we limit your exposures? First part that he touched on is offsite storage for your data. That is doing what we call duplication risk control. So you're duplicating your data, so if it's gone one way, you have it another way. And the other big one is for your property, for the actual computers themselves. We put them on what's called an electronic data policy, or electronic data property. Because what that means is your computers are now protected no matter what. It's almost like if any of you are familiar with an inland marine policy, it protects certain pieces of equipment no matter what. In the municipality, you're nodding your head. You know exactly what it is.
Yeah.
You put on things like forklifts or expensive pieces of machinery because, hey, no matter what happens, it's covered. Electronic data processing takes a lot of those same coverages and puts them on your computers. The big one that we always talk about for that is power surges. If you have your computers on your policy, normally a power surge isn't going to protect them. Your policy is not going to protect them from that. But using electronic data processing policy, that removes that risk. It transfers the risk of your equipment getting damaged onto the insurance company. Now it's their problem. If it gets damaged, there's a claim possible. And then one more piece that's pretty important to know about is business income loss, because the biggest scare factor for most businesses, and the reason 60% of them fail when they get hit, is that, hey, we can't operate. This isn't working. We're not able to make money because our systems are gone. And what you want to make sure is that your policy has a business income loss portion of it. And what that does is that will jump in after a certain period of time and say, okay, we're going to replace the income that you're losing because you can't operate because of X. In this case, X is a cyber event. And that's something really, really important. If you are a business that deals with customers' credit cards, debit card numbers, any personal information, anything that can be used to damage your customer, well, your cyber policy, if it's just a quick little throw-in, it might protect you from any kind of damage. But if you're dealing with customers' information that can be used to harm them, i.e. the credit reports, financial data, then you need a policy that also reaches over and protects the third party in this case. You're the first party, the hacker's the second party, your customer is the third party. And you need a policy that can reach over and protect them too. And it's not given on the throw-in policies where, hey, this is $300, great, go ahead and take it. It's going to give you $50,000 in coverage. You have to get a more specific cyber policy. I should say, I have not seen one of the throw-in policies that includes it. You have to really specifically dig in. That's why what I said in the beginning, when you talk about cyber insurance, it's really such a risk control discussion first. And have it with your insurance agent. Say, hey, I'm scared of this. How am I going to protect myself? And then we go through all the risks identify where you're vulnerable, and then say, okay, this is the right kind of policy for you. We're going to protect you this way, or maybe you need this kind. So it's really a risk control discussion first, and then we look at how we can just reduce your risk, and then what we need to cover the risk that's left over. Any questions on that? I didn't want to overload you guys with anything. Like I said, it's really a discussion first to have with your agent to find out what do we need to do. One last piece, just the ransomware attacks. Everyone's always hearing those in the news, and a lot of people feel like, hey, it can't happen to me. It happened to Troy Borough. Troy Borough, the cultural epicenter that it is, I can say that because I live there, got hacked. The traffic light went all awry, and luckily the policy we had them on had coverage for it. And Troy Borough had to pay out in Bitcoin to the hacker, and then they released it. Now every time the traffic signal goes a little crazy, we all think, oh no, we got broken. Oh my gosh. But it just goes to show that it can happen to anyone. And it's interesting. The reason they went after someone like Troy Borough is because they know there's no defenses there, or very minimal defenses. What's easier, 100 of them or one large corporation that might have the resources to come after you? They found, hey, the little guys are easier to step on. Let's take all their money. So that's another big reason why when you're considering yourself too small to be attacked, it actually can make you a prime target. So it's just something to consider. But that's it. That's all I've got. Any questions at all? All righty. Well, thank you guys. We really appreciate all of you coming.